My elevator pitch is very simple. Don't cut down the old growth tree, upcycle the rice hull, make a product that looks and feels like these types of woods, these old growth woods, that's paintable, stainable, and also that you then don't need to maintenance it in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
You're listening to the Business for Good podcast, the show where you'll hear inspirational stories about companies making money by solving some of the world's most pressing problems. I'm your host, Paul Shapiro, and I'm glad you've joined us. Greetings, friend, and welcome to episode 182 of the Business for Good podcast. Most of us look at a field of rice and we see, well, rice. But my guest on this episode today sees something very different. He sees the future of building materials and a pathway to fighting deforestation, all wrapped inside of one of agriculture's most overlooked waste streams, the humble rice hull, of which billions of pounds are burned or landfilled annually. On this episode, I sit down with Chris Guimond, founder and CEO of Modern Mill, the Mississippi-based company behind ACRE, a wood-like building material made by upcycling discarded rice hulls into high-performance siding, decking, and trim. If that sounds impossible, Chris is here to explain exactly how and why Modern Mill cracked the code on turning a fluffy agricultural byproduct into a scalable alternative to old-growth wood. In our conversation, Chris shares how Modern Mill built a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in rural Mississippi, why the company has already surpassed $20 million in annual revenue, and how they have raised more than $86 million from investors to scale a physical, hard-tech startup in a world dominated by software. We also talk about supply chains, the economics of upcycling, how to beat billion-dollar incumbents, and what it takes to build a company that moves atoms rather than just bytes. If you care about climate solutions, circular economy breakthroughs, rural revitalization, or simply love hearing how entrepreneurs turn unlikely ideas into category-defining companies, you're going to love this conversation. Chris, welcome to the Business for Good podcast.
Happy to be here, Paul. Thank you.
Hey, I'm really glad to be talking with you. You know, there's a lot of people who would look at a field of rice and they would never think to themselves, I want to build my house out of that. It seems almost like, we were taught, like when we're kids, we listen to like the Big Bad Wolf and, they try to, build the house out of straw, and it's not such a good idea. But somebody thought building a house out of straw, a rice straw that is actually a good idea. Why? Why would somebody think that?
So, yeah, my background is really a big part of it's been around. First of all, I have a bachelor's and master's degree in plastics engineering. So that's how I got into all this stuff. But during those years, especially on the academic side, there was a heavy focus for me around sustainability for sure, recycling of those types of materials that we were working with, but then also finding ways to use throwaway materials, especially throwaway agricultural products. So there's always been a passion for me in and around that space. But yeah, I think the high level answer is when you see something that delivers a property like what a rice husk does, and you understand that what that rice husk is doing while the rice is growing, protecting it from moisture, protecting it from pests, doesn't rot, those types of things. If you can find a way to leverage that into something like a building material, there became this sort of natural synergy. And, people have been trying to figure out what to do with a lot of these throwaway agricultural products for a long time, be it rice hulls or others. And I think, what we've done is finally crack the code on how to take that material, sort of leverage those properties, put it into something that's very usable, addresses a need, and then ultimately is scalable on a manufacturing level.
Interesting. So let's talk about what you just referred to as the need. It addresses a need. What's the need? We have no problem building houses without rice husks. What's the problem?
So from the highest level, cutting down old growth trees, right? So if you think about deforestation, if you think about the rainforest in, 25 years from now in 2050, a statistic I often quote is if we do nothing as a society, we could be down to wiping out, more than half or more of the rainforest, right? So something needs to be done. And it's my view that what that something needs to be done is on the level of supply demand economics, meaning the need for cutting down mahogany, ipe, cedar, redwood, right? Those types of trees exist because people like the look and feel of the wood. It's stainable, it's paintable. Then if you can find something that is substitute to that looks as good, around the same price or better, but then also you don't have to maintenance it, that's the need, right? So my elevator pitch is very simple. Don't cut down the old growth tree, upcycle the rice hull, make a product that looks and feels like these types of woods, these old growth woods, that's paintable, stainable, and also that you then don't need to maintenance it in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Up to this point, there's been other options besides cutting down trees, right? And that's where this world of composites have come from. But generally, there's been a compromise. It's going to look and feel like plastic. It's going to look and feel like cement. It doesn't look and feel like that piece of wood, that mahogany, that ipe, that cedar, that nice piece of wood that people want to work with, let alone how easy it is to work with. Like carpenters enjoy working with wood. Well, they enjoy working with our products. So the need ultimately is you can't keep cutting down. We can't keep cutting down as a society old growth trees and expect that they're going to regrow within our lifetimes, right? I'm talking 50, 60, 100-year-old type trees, softwoods or hardwoods. That's the need.
Okay, very compelling elevator pitch, I have to say. You talked about different species of trees and how they differ from one another, and you're saying your material, ACRE, is more similar to them than some of the composites. But if those trees differ from one another, is your material more similar to one? Is it more similar to mahogany or to redwood? Or is it just like a more generic wood?
Love that question. It all is in the way that you finish it. And that gets into the workability and ultimately stainability and paintability of our product. Now, just through our manufacturing process, it's a 4-step process, right? So we bring in the rice hulls, we grind them, we mix a compound, then we extrude a board. So we have a continuous extrusion process. We're extruding a board anywhere from 1/4 inch up to 1 inch thick. Generally, it's 4 feet wide, and we cut it at whatever length somebody would want. Now we're in what we call the modern mill, right? The modern take on a sawmill. Don't cut down the tree, upcycle the rice hull, extrude this board. And then in the final process of that, so grind the rice, mix a compound, extrude a board, the 4th step of that is we're now truly in the modern mill. That's where we run our ACRE boards, ACRE because we're saving acres and acres of trees, and we're upcycling acres and acres of rice husks, right? So we take our ACRE sheets and we add what we call the ACRE grain. That ACRE grain is what allows us to apply a stain or paint, or really anybody, right? Because a good amount of our product we actually just sell unfinished and people will field finish it. They can take a water-based stain or paint. We generally say make sure you refer to our coatings guide on our website to understand what types are approved, but you can apply a stain or paint to that ACRE grain, and that's what gives that vertical grain look. Now, depending upon which stain you would apply, that would depend on which type of wood you're trying to mimic. So it's really all in about how you finish it, but it's that ACRE grain is what the real differentiating factor is in our product.
Interesting. Okay, so that is pretty compelling, and it actually goes to something that I was wondering, which is about the IP. I was thinking, okay, well, how much IP is there involved in taking rice husks and turning them into this product? But obviously, it sounds like quite a substantial amount based on what you said. And my guess is that it is not purely rice hull. I think you're also adding other things to the rice hulls, like recycled PVC and other things like that. So is that where the IP lies, in the combination and the proportion of rice hulls to your other ingredients? Or is it also in the actual processing steps that you just mentioned?
Sure. It's around formulaic IP, which is essentially what you're saying, taking the rice hulls, mixing with other materials. And so we call it either the formula or the compound. So there's IP around that, but also we're constantly innovating at Modern Mills. So over the years, we've worked on, various steps of the process, and we're constantly morphing on our IP and adding to it. But yeah, ultimately it would be around the compound or the formula, and then potentially also around the process. And then really, as we continue to develop various products, there's opportunities for IP around that. I generally, when I think about what have we done that's different than what anybody else has ever done, it's crack the code of how do you take something from something that you can't really put into a large addressable market, because you can create something in a lab, or you can create something that's really difficult to work with. But what we've done is really expanded this idea into a large scale addressable market, right? So our product is such that it's easily adopted, right? We've created all of the various credentials that we need. And let's talk just specifically on our siding product, right? We've created various profiles that somebody would want. So shiplap is like our main siding profile. So we've gone out and created the credentials around that, right? So we have our fire rating for California, the WUI, it's called WUI, Wildland Urban Interface. We have the Miami-Dade for screw and nail pull, Category 4 wind load hurricane testing. It passes that. So it's about really being able to scale up the manufacturing to create a significant amount of volume, then create a product that is what the market really needs. And not only that, making it easy to install, right? So our shiplap, for instance, it's got a flange. You hit it with some ring shank nails with a nail gun or screws. You can face fasten it. We have a plug system that works very simply, but there's nothing complicated about how to install it, and that's what allows us to really scale into a volume market like siding.
Interesting. Okay, so Chris, when most people think about recycling, right, they're thinking like downcycling, right? Like you're taking, let's say something like a new piece of glass and turning it into a recycled piece of glass. You're not really downcycling, though. You're upcycling, right? You're turning farm waste, these rice hulls that just get burned or landfilled, into something of higher value. So what, in your view, is like your secret sauce in making that work economically? You talked about how it needs to perform like wood, but you also, of course, need it to compete on cost with wood. Sure, there are some people who will want to buy ACRE because they don't want to contribute to deforestation, but most people and most builders are going to be, going on cost. So when you're taking this product, which I imagine is either free or extremely low cost to you, and trying to turn it into something valuable, what's the key to economically making that work?
So the first step of that is geographically where you located, right? You want to ultimately be close to where the rice mills are. And the rice mills, because that's where these rice hulls are generally created through an aggregation process. So the mills will bring it in from the rice farms, and what comes in is rough rice. So that's the rice grain plus the rice hull goes to the mill. They separate the grain from the hull. Ultimately, we, as in the U.S., we produce a lot of rice. So Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, California, those are like your main rice producing states. As a society, we eat a good amount of rice, but we still actually export a fair amount of rice in this country because a lot of other countries might have more demand for rice than we do. But a good amount, almost all of them, of the agricultural byproduct ultimately gets left behind. And there's not a ton of uses for that, right? People have been trying to figure out what to do with it for years. So the answer on, do we get a favorable price on those rice hulls? Absolutely, because there's a good amount of them.
You say you're getting a favorable price. It's a waste product for them. They have to pay to get rid of it. They have to burn it. They've got to put it in a landfill. Why don't they just give it to you for free?
At this phase, the majority of the cost is bringing it from the rice mills to our facility. Because if you imagine, rice husks are pretty fluffy, so you're kind of shipping a lot of air, and that's why it's where you locate is probably the first step of this. I think as we continue to scale, we've certainly have met with various rice mills that will just give it to us. Right now, we have a program where we pay a small amount, and the bigger cost of that is actually in shipping it, right? So shipping it from the rice mill to Modern Mill, which is located in Fernwood, Mississippi. It's about an hour outside of New Orleans, hour and a half outside of New Orleans, just for geographical point of reference. But that's really where you want to be, as close to where the rice is grown and ultimately close to where the rice mills are, so that we can bring it from the rice mills to Modern Mill via truck. But yeah, as on a go forward, if we think about our plant 2 or plant 3, or we go to a place where there's maybe more production and there's more of an issue with them, we could set up a plant potentially next door to a rice mill, and then the freight goes away, and then ultimately we could get them completely for free. But I think right now it's a good program that we have. The majority of the cost is in the freight, still not a huge line item, and ultimately that's what we're doing, is displacing polymer with a throwaway agricultural product, thereby creating a cost advantage along with property advantage. And that's probably the bigger one.
How cool. I actually live near the port of what's called West Sacramento, where the rice is exported to Asia. So I see these huge cargo ships taking all the rice from the Sacramento Valley, basically, and bringing it out to Asia. And a lot of people are not familiar with the fact that Asia imports a lot of rice from us. Obviously, they consume a lot more rice than we do. And a lot of that comes from here. And so I get to watch that. And it'd be cool to see a Modern Mill facility located right there. That would be a lot of fun. You talked about the economics. Is it cost competitive with wood now, or is that still aspirational for you? Are you already beating wood on price?
Yeah, so I would say it depends upon the timing of the market, right? What's happening with the general supply demand cycles. But in general, we are cheaper than a lot of the old growth woods that we're talking about, be it Ipe mahogany, cedar, and depending on which type of cedar we're talking about, right? But vertical grain, something where somebody's trying to get nice product to use for like a vertical shiplap install, generally we're significantly cheaper than that. And then also, it's because of the quality of some of these woods that are coming out now. They're not the quality that they used to be. So if you talk to builders, they're going to tell you, a hardwood that they got 30 years ago is very different than that hardwood that they're getting today. If you go into your local big box retail and you go and look in the cedar aisle, you're generally going to see it's all kind of picked over, and what's left is stuff with, cracks or twisted or whatever. So when people get our product, it's a lot easier to work with. Generally, it's cheaper, again, depending upon what we're talking about, I would say, but the majority of the time we're cheaper than a lot of those old growth hardwoods and softwoods sometimes. And then for sure you get the benefit on the maintenance, right? Because remember, if you install that cedar next year, 2 years, 3 years from now, you're out there scraping and repainting. With our product, you don't have to. You're one and done. Put it up, apply that paint or stain. Then the next year, the year after generally looks the same.
Nice. So is this the reason why builders build with it? Like, you guys are doing over $20 million in revenue now, which of course is sizable for any startup, but especially a startup that's selling actual physical goods, right? As opposed to just subscriptions. And that's a lot. So people are using it. Is this the top reason that it's cost effective for them? Or is it because they prefer the low maintenance nature? Like, what's the actual pitch when you're talking to somebody about why they should build with ACRE?
So one of our distributors, they went through what happened with redwood. They were starting to see what happened with cedar. So they were really worried about being able to get cedar on a regular basis. And then, of course, the price getting out of control. And again, play that forward. At some point, people will have a problem cutting down a tree that's 50, 60, 70 years to regrow. Now, you can try to say, well, I'm regrowing it, but the regrowth cycle is 40 years. I mean, when you run those supply demand curves and you look at just the sheer demand of these products, it's absolutely massive. So the price over time continues to go up for woods that take a long time to grow. That's just inherent. So if somebody's looking through that lens, that's unequivocally what they're thinking about is, how do I make sure I have the supply to be able to keep the business going, or if you're a builder, just to be able to use it to build your next house. But yeah, now if you're talking to a homeowner, what a great story. Hey, I've just bought this product called ACRE by Modern Mill. They use upcycle rice hulls, which is a throwaway agricultural product. That already becomes dinner party conversation. Oh, I didn't know how much rice we grew in this country. I didn't know there was a rice hull. I didn't know you could take it and use it. So that becomes amazing dinner party conversation. And now you're out there looking at it. It's not splintering. It's not cracking. The paint's not chipping. The stain's not failing. And so you have the maintenance, and it ultimately looks beautiful because now you have this vertical grain, which really may or may not be there depending upon the quality of the wood that you can get. So I would say it's definitely a price thing on the wood. It's a supply thing on the wood, in terms of the availability. But then absolutely it becomes, I think, for the builder, what a great value sell. Does people care about sustainability, right? They want to know what have you done for me lately in sustainability? And our product not only prevents having to cut down an old growth tree, but we're upcycling a throwaway agricultural product that left alone turns to CH4, methane gas, greenhouse gas. So there's a carbon story there. So people love the sustainability aspect of it. And it's a really cool product. And then certainly when you're standing next to it, you want to touch it because with the rice hull, it has this feel of wood. So if you can imagine exterior siding a lot of people have these outdoor living spaces now that you're in contact with your exterior siding, you can go up, you lean against it, touch it. There's that biophilic nature of our product that people actually want to be close to it and feel it and see it and ask about it. And I always talk about the dinner party aspect of this. People love it. They love to talk about it, whether it's architects, builders, homeowners.
Yeah, cool. So I would love to touch it, and I'm looking forward to asking you how that may be possible. But before I do that, I want to ask you, Chris, a little bit more about the difference between being a hardware-based sustainability startup like yourself, and then let's say somebody else who's just selling downloads or selling subscriptions, right? Like these hardware-based sustainability startups that are not just messing around with zeros and ones, but they're actually selling products made out of atoms, like your product, like ACRE. They oftentimes face tough capital needs, right? You had to build an entire factory, for example. So how did you fund Modern Mill's scale up? You guys have raised over $80 million in venture capital. Like, how did you do it? And what advice do you have for other founders who are building in physical industries also?
Yeah, I mean, simple, not easy, right? That's probably the first part of that. I think, you have to look at what are the capital needs, right? And obviously, as you said, to build out a large scale, state of the art manufacturing facility, by the way, in the US. So we've created, U.S. jobs, we've got U.S. feedstock, U.S. rice hulls. There's a made in America story there that also people really resonate with when we think about the ecosystem of which we're selling to. They can jump on a plane, they can come down. We welcome people to do it. They land in New Orleans. We take an hour and 20-minute drive. We're at Modern Mill. We tour them through it. Everybody really loves to see it. But yeah, it's a state-of-the-art manufacturing plant that ultimately can scale up to a significant amount of capacity, like much more than what we're doing today. And this is that build it and they will come mindset, right? What we didn't want to do is build a fixed amount of capacity that we sell out and then go, oh, sorry guys, well, we can't supply you anymore. Or now your lead time is 20 weeks, right? We wanted to hold our lead times as steady as possible, understand that we can continue to grow this over time. So we want to be able to match the needs of the market. So as the market, and we're seeing that now, right? We're starting to hit that tipping point where now we have national coverage, right? National distribution. We have distributors, we have top tier two-step distributors, we have top tier dealers and retailers that are adopting the product. We have builders that love working with it. So as that demand continues to come, we can now just scale up in Mississippi at our existing plant. And we also have thought about plenty of redundancies, right? Because you want to make sure that we have plenty of redundancies so we can always be able to provide the product. So if you think about it through that lens, yeah, there's a big capital need. So the way we went about it was we raised just private capital. We didn't go to institutions at the beginning. It was just all high net worth private individuals, raised those through a few different series of fundings. And yeah, we raised over $80 million, I believe over $85 million. And we built a pretty significant manufacturing facility to be able to do this. We're a high growth company. So I think at the beginning, it's about build that capacity and make sure that, that capacity is there and you can tap into it when you need it. And then sort of the second phase, and I bucket things pretty simple. How to make stuff, number one, how to sell stuff, number two. So now we're in that sort of how to sell stuff phase. That's about awareness, availability, and then installation success, meaning people get it. They understand if I want that mahogany finish, I understand what coating I would use. I understand how to install it. I understand how to, do a folded corner like they just recently did on the television program, This Old House, right? They love the folded corners because you can do so much that we haven't even got into the features and benefits of our product, but there's so much on that. So as people start to adopt it, you really want to be able to match that need, that demand that starts to come in. And that's really all about sort of front loading it to build a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility that can be grown and scaled. And that also allows you from an efficiency standpoint to be able to get to a price point where we can compete with a lot of the bigger players in our space, right? Because think about the companies that we're competing against. It's billion-dollar companies, right? So it's us, it's David Goliath, right? And when we have to make sure that, we have the ability to scale and we can get to these efficiencies that we need to get to as that demand comes in. But yeah, that's how we did it. We raised capital privately and there's other options as time goes on and we're constantly evaluating what those options look like. But yeah, to your point, if you're moving atoms and setting up a big manufacturing facility like we have, it just takes a significant amount of capital. Then I would also say on the awareness side, so many people still don't know what they don't know. They don't even know we exist, right? They don't know about the whole rice hull story, right? Our goal is in a few years, you'll start to see, commercials with celebrity personalities behind them that really starts to get out, billboards, right? Various types of advertising, social media. We already have a great social media presence, but we just want to continue to grow that. Certainly billboards and just basic things that we haven't really done yet to really get the awareness out there, which then that parlays into the availability, right? Because if people want it, then all of a sudden miraculously it's available, right? Dealers will bring it on, retailers will bring it on.
The factory, you're talking about having a big factory. If you can, Chris, what was the total CapEx to create the factory?
It's intense, right? Because we have, if you think about the equipment that we have, it's big grinding equipment, it's extrusion equipment, it's downstream equipment, it's material conveying equipment. So it's pretty massive. So it's a significant number in terms of setting up a manufacturing facility like that. It's exterior silos. It's to be able to store the material. Rice hull offloading. We didn't even, nobody, it's like good luck trying to figure out how to unload rice hulls for our type of a situation. We had to really engineer that from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. So whatever it is, let's say 25, 50, 100 million, whatever it is to build the factory, you're talking about being in major growth phase. You want to do national ad campaigns, celebrities. So, right now, of course, $20 million is a lot for a startup, but in the total wood industry, right? It's a rounding error, right? And in order to make the impact that you want to have, you're going to need to get to hundreds of millions and eventually billions of dollars of revenue. Is that going to require you to then spend hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to build more factories? Or will you find contract manufacturers who might be able to find a way to do this for you, even if they can't, even if they're not currently set up to do your process? Could they do that for you? Is the pathway for you more modern mill owned self-manufacturing? Or is there some other way that you might be able to license the tech or have a CMO do something for you?
Yeah, I mean, licensing is always an option, right? But I think our North Star has always been, let's build the one facility. Let's get it to where we're starting to knock on the door of 50, 60, 70% capacity utilization. And as you start to get to those numbers, let's start thinking about our second plant. And we've been thinking about our second plant, right? We've been talking to various states. There's funding available, potentially from states. But you got to think as we start to ramp up just even our current facility, and you really start to show that the market is really adopting the product, and that, to your point, to grow to probably 100, 200, 300 million in a massive addressable market like ours ultimately becomes a rounding error. And I think the people have asked, because even this year we've done really well in terms of growing our revenue in a year where maybe some haven't, and I think our sliver of the pie is so small, right? We're just adding on to that small sliver of the pie. And in doing that, we're growing our sales. But yeah, I think as we get to where we're going to start to get into the second or third plant, I would imagine we would probably do it ourselves, but certainly there could be an opportunity for joint ventures, licensing. I mean, we're open to all options. We get a lot of those inbounds now of people that are interested in partnering in various ways, whether it's they would create an offtake agreement with us out of our current facility, whether it's, ideas around a JV, whether it's they're maybe like a big distributor and they want to just sort of distribute. But I think for us, we've got the facility to do a significant amount of volume out of that first plant. And as we start to get to where we're using, let's say, half or a little bit more of that plant, we probably want to really start thinking about where would that second location be. And then the good news is once you go through what we went through, we really have perfected what does that model look like. So we know exactly what it takes now to build one of these in terms of, equipment, CapEx, timing on that, and location, how to move the materials around, how to set up rice hull offloading, right? These are things that we didn't have at the beginning. We had to figure all that out. Feeding the mixer, right, on a very regular basis, like large amounts of material on in a very regular basis. These are not trivial things, but we've kind of cracked the code and figured that out of how to do it. So I think our second facility will be, significantly easier for us. Plus we have all the resources from the Mississippi plant.
Nice. Well, that's exciting. It's certainly nice to be in control of your own destiny that way, if that's the way that the winds blow for you, for sure, Chris. If somebody wants to use ACRE, it's not like they're just ordering from your website. You guys are sold in stores. I looked on your website, and again, I live in Sacramento, and there's a store only 5 miles from my house that is selling it. So you guys must be in a lot of places. I think you can buy it in some Home Depots. Is that right? But not all?
Yeah, so we're starting. I'm not sure of the program that we're in with Home Depot, but I believe they can get it through their special order program. They're generally not stocking it. So the way that we've gone to market, right, is just through what's called the LBM channel, Lumber Building Materials channel. So it's us, modern mill manufacturer, sells top tier 2-step distributor, would then sell a dealer or a retailer or a lumber yard. Those are kind of interchangeable terms depending upon where you're at. Our goal is to get to that dealer, lumberyard, or retail level and have them become stocking. Why do we want them stocking, even if it's just a couple of units? Because if you, Paul, are building a house, or your builder is building a house and he needs a stick of acre, he can run to that store 5 minutes away and, hey, I need a 1 by 6 by 16 piece of acre. So that's why we want people stocking. And also they get a price advantage for doing that, and it's motivational for them. And then we want them to be able to really be talking about our products. So when builders come in, they can say, hey, have you heard of this product? It's an amazing product. It's sustainable. It's paintable, looks and feels like wood, cuts like wood. There's no dust. It's good clean air certification. They can ramble off all the properties and get people excited. And that's what we want.
Yeah, and I was going to say something similar, which is, of course, 9 plus out of 10 people have no idea about modern mill, right? They're not going to know to ask Home Depot to special order a product. They're going to need wood. They're going to go to Home Depot, or they're going to go to Lowe's, and they're going to see what's there, and they're going to buy something there. So that's awesome. But on your website, which we'll link to at the show notes for this episode at businessforgoodpodcast.com, you can put in your own zip code and see where you can buy ACRE. Because if I were going to put something on my house, I would love to have that story. What you said, Chris, like I would like, to do something better than cutting down trees, obviously. But I also would think it would be cool just as like a talking point, but like, yeah, this is actually made from rice hulls. That'd be pretty awesome. Let me ask you, this has been a wild ride for you. Like most founders are never going to raise more than $80 million, reach over 20 million in revenue, create a factory, be selling nationwide. You guys have been a large success story. What's the exit look like, though, for you? It's not a success story yet, right? Your investors have not exited. They've put in capital. They expect to see a return on that capital. Are you guys going to be, do you think in the future, like you aspire to be acquired by a lumber company, a wood company, a Home Depot type company? Are you going to IPO? Like, what do you think is the way that your investors end up getting a return?
Yeah, I think any and all of those could happen, right? So I think if and when the time was right, if we ran a process, that buyer universe becomes anybody, like you're saying, it could be, large strategics that are out there currently in our space that we've been maybe selling against, right? Or and they're seeing it that we're taking some market share. So there could be something like that on the strategic side. It could be private equity for sure. I think for us, our North Star has really been to just focus on the blocking and tackling, like really get the manufacturing facilities set up properly, really work on those efficiencies, really create a quality product, really create this beautiful acre grain that when people stain it, they go, wow, I cannot tell that is not a piece of mahogany. And then let people understand that in that next year, in a New England winter, it goes through a freeze-thaw cycle. You go out and you look at it next year, you're not having to scrape it and repaint it. That in of itself is going to create this, and that's what you described it, it's this incredible momentum that we've developed, right, in a short period of time. We have national distribution. We have the fire rating in California, right? We have there's other states now that are having similar issues to California in terms of fire-prone areas. So when people understand that, wait, I can have this beautiful look and feel of wood. I mean, think about fences, right? You can't necessarily, as the rebuilds start to happen in some of these areas, it's not a good idea. And I don't even know if it's going to be allowed to use wood fences. So this is an alternative to that. It can look and feel like wood, but it's got a fire rating. So there's so many uses. And I think as we continue to figure out where does this product go, where are we really, meeting the demands of the market, we're always like listening to our customers say, what do you need? What could be interesting? I think as we continue to do that, good things will happen in any of those things that you mentioned, whether it's a strategic acquisition, which that's generally probably low hanging fruit, right? Is that idea of a strategic acquisition, because again, they're in the space, they understand it, they're in our ecosystem in terms of they already have the distribution, everything lined out. IPO, I mean, we haven't thought too much ahead about that, but I think as if we focus and do the right thing and really continue to develop our top line revenue, continue to focus on our efficiencies, focus on our gross margins, make sure we have a good, healthy, sustainable business from a financial perspective, I think all of those things become options for us. And, it's early for us still, right? This year we've done over 20 million in revenue, and, next year we want to grow from there. So I think we want to get into it a little bit more and see where things go, see how the market develops. But yeah, the ultimate success I think that we've had up to this point is figuring out how to make it, figuring out how to sell it, figuring out all of the various SKUs that we wanted to make, how to credential those, how to get, people, we should talk about that. To get people is probably one of the most challenging things, right? To find really good people and build a team and focus on the culture. So we've done all to create the creation of quality jobs in, parts of the US that need it. Like it's an amazing story and people really resonate with that story. And that's what we want to continue to do.
Okay, so you're in no rush to exit. Apparently, no need to exit, financial need at this point. So we'll be looking forward to seeing the future success that you'll have, and when your investors get that return, what a great moment that'll be for them too. So, Chris, there are lots of ideas that people have for doing lots of cool things with waste products or other ideas that can enhance sustainability. I was actually reading a paper recently about using rice hulls and fermenting them to make animal feed. So you don't have to grow soybeans or corn to feed to animals. And it's pretty cool to read about some of the stuff, like the other uses of rice hulls even. And I'll include a link to that study in the show notes for this episode at businessforgoodpodcast.com. But are there other ideas, whether upcycling or otherwise, that you want to recommend that somebody check out if somebody wants to start their own company to try to do something and they're inspired by you? What should they consider doing?
I travel quite a bit, as you can imagine, right? So I'm always flying somewhere. So I think finding ways to create more healthy food options in general, right? I think if you're at a hotel, there's some hotels that do okay with it now, and certainly there's DoorDash, but I just think there's got to be a way to solve for just having, simple, healthy meals, like in a more on-demand basis. So I think from my own personal perspective, that's what if I'm getting ready to go on a plane, I'm always thinking about. I mean, I generally eat healthy when I'm at my house, right? I cook a lot of my own meals, but it would be nice to just be able to be somewhere and just, maybe it's through tech that already exists. But right now you still have to, go through DoorDash or whatever, one of these apps and figure out like what's the best restaurant, what are the healthy options. It's not super easy, but I just wonder, could there be a hotel chain, something like that really offers, like it's really catered towards people that, want to get there. And then the other thing I would add to that is like, so I guess this would be the concept is some type of a hotel offering that, they really focus on air quality, and that this sort of plays into the world that we're in with Modern Mill, is creating products that are great for indoor, great for outdoor. They're healthy to work with in terms of there's no skin irritant, no lung irritants. So when I think about when I'm in a hotel room, like not having air freshener, having maybe materials that are more just healthy choice kind of materials, whether it's carpet or whatever else. But I think about those things, and just as you cater towards the more conscious traveler these days, like it's probably thinking around, diet, lifestyle. I mean, these are the things that people are really fixated and focused on. So I think making that more attainable. It's still it's kind of wild to think that there hasn't been this yet. Like maybe there's smaller versions of it, but it's not like in my face everywhere to where it seems like it's an option for me. So I would love to see that.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you my own trick for flying. If you want to make people around you on the airplane envious, pack in your bag. It's an amazing technology. It's called a carton of raspberries. And that is not code. That is literally a carton of raspberries in your bag. And whenever every flight, I bring a carton of raspberries. It's like my ritual. And everybody around me is so envious that I have fresh raspberries. And it's such a simple thing. It's a few dollars. Don't buy it at the airport. That's a ripoff. Buy it and put it in your bag. And, it's in a hard clamshell package, so it's not going to, explode in your bag or anything. And I find it a really great way to eat something healthy on a plane and make everyone around me wish they were me, because it's so much better than eating, pretzels or whatever. So that's my tip. So not any new company there, but it is something that I recommend.
I was getting ready to fly probably tomorrow, so I'm going to be going to look for that.
I think that I inspire you and people listening, Chris, to eat raspberries a little would make me happier than to be a trendsetter on that. Okay, resources that you would recommend. You've done a lot. You've achieved a lot. Are there any resources that you have used, whether books or otherwise, that have been useful for you that you would recommend for anybody else seeking to do something important in the world?
I think from a resource perspective, there's obviously so many books out there, so many books on business, marketing, scaling. I think the resource that is probably most important is the ability to build a team. And that can happen various ways. You can certainly read books around that. I think in terms of where to focus, that it's focus on how do I build a team, especially when you're in the business of, like you said earlier, moving atoms, making stuff, right? It's really important to have good people that are there. I mean, you got to be able to do what you're doing on a Monday at 2:00 and a Wednesday at 3 a.m, right? You have to be able to kind of continue to get product out that's at a good quality, the right consistency. That's all about, I think, people, a team. And so from a resource perspective, that's really what I try to focus on. And then I think the other piece I would say is that, just focusing on making sure that, you yourself are in a good space, right? However that works. So it could be, meditation, yoga, movement, walking, hiking, making sure you take the time to do the things to put yourself in a really good mental state, drinking tea. So, I mean, if somebody had to categorize me, it'd probably be hiking, going for walks, spending time with my dog, drinking tea, and then just cultivating that time, because I think that's important, to be able to then go out and do the things that we need to do as entrepreneurs, right? So deal with challenges, deal with situations that unfold. So the better your inner state, the better you're going to be able to deal with those things.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. I'll tell you, there's very little that improves my own welfare than just taking my dog for a walk along the Sacramento River or taking him to the park. And I do a lot of work calls there. And so I'm basically with him, and I'm doing various calls, or I call my parents or whoever, but I do something that is really, really pleasurable for him and for me. So I joke that like the greatest welfare enhancer I have is not money or fame or status. It's like my dog, spending time with my dog definitely improves my welfare more than anything. But listen, Chris, I'm rooting hard for you guys. Modern Mill is a really cool company. And by the way, are you familiar with Modern Meadow? Do you know those guys?
No.
Check them out. So a very different company, but it's another cool company that is with a very similar name. They're basically making alternatives to leather. So it's called Modern Meadow, and they're using biotechnology to grow microbes that look and feel like leather but aren't leather. But anyway, they were founded before you guys. So the Modern slogan is a very popular one, I guess. But I'm hoping that you guys build many factories all around the world, including where I live in Sacramento. And I look forward to having some piece of my property have ACRE on it soon. So good luck. And again, congratulations on all the success that you're having.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. I hope you found it useful, and if you did, please let the world know. Leave the show a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app and share the episode with your friends. Who knows? Maybe you'll inspire one of them to be in the business of doing good themselves.